Good morning, everybody. Surprise, I made it. July 3rd, Friday morning at 7:33 a.m. Apologies for being a little late. But here we are. So, this is the day before a holiday. I do have the day off, but I thought I got some things I'd like to talk about and some poems to read. So let's keep this gravy train rolling, baby. May never say that again, but here we go. We're having fun. Uh, so, um, again, every episode is just trying to figure out little things a little bit more, the flow a little bit more. Guess what? This time I wrote myself a little agenda to get through things. First thing, good morning. Got it out of the way. Hope you're well out there. Second thing, I want to get some shout outs to some friends who have left comments and have actually reached out to me. So it is possible you can too. First off, Armando Rivera. He works at King's Chapel in Boston, Massachusetts, a fellow historian and literature nerd. He let me know that Oliver Wendell Holmes attended King's Chapel, and my friend Armando, he recommended the poem "Old Ironsides" by Holmes. So definitely gonna check that out at some point. And if you're in Boston, check out King's Chapel. Super cool piece of history there. Ask for Armando Rivera. Second shout out is to Craig Johnson, another history and lit nerd. He is a good friend of mine in the theater community. He hosts his own literature podcast YouTube channel called Literary Lockdown. I would recommend that. Sort of similar in the same vein, he does some really great readings of classic short stories, poems, and all things literature. You can find those in the comments in a little bit, or in the descriptions in a little bit. Uh, okay, great. Moving on. I wanted to just mention that yesterday I talked about a fellow named Strong Vincent. He was killed at the Battle of Gettysburg, and I mentioned that I didn't know anything about him. So what did I do? I just looked him up on my own time that afternoon. Fascinating, of course. He lived and was born in Erie, Pennsylvania. Now, if you go there, there's like high schools named after him. Strong, Vincent. I mean, what a great, first of all, what a great name for high school's like football team. The Strongs. So, yeah, I think that's cool. He also is a main character in the book The Killer Angels, which is something I talked about yesterday. I did get the author's name wrong. Willing to admit that. I said the author's name was Jeff Shaara. Looked it up. It is Michael Shaara. Jeff is his son, who has his own really great line of historical fiction novels. But the book is The Killer Angels by Michael Shaara. And it's one of my favorite books if you're really into that. It was later adapted into the film Gettysburg, which I haven't yet seen, but the book is where it's at. So got those things out of the way. Great. And normally for the past 3 episodes, this is where I have gone into like a this day in history and done some quick Googling just to see. That's how I found out about Strong Vincent. I don't know. Like, that's fun. That's fine. I also like the idea of figuring out like current events rather than this day in history. Like, okay, this day in history, but how, if, and where is it affecting current events? So I don't know. I just want to take you on a little journey that I went on yesterday. Super quick though. um, so I'll just dive into it. We all know that Disney has revamped their longtime um, theme park attraction, um, Splash Mountain, which is based on the movie Song of the South. And before we go on, I'm not going to get into like the whole history of what I'm talking about. I encourage you to look it all up, but to do so, for me to just talk about that would be a whole episode unto itself. So, Song of the South, 1940s live action animated film, super racist. Disney hasn't released it in over 30 years, never direct to home video. But it does feature a song called Zip-a-Dee-Doo-Dah, which, if you've never seen Song of the South or know what that is, you've probably at least heard of Zip-a-Dee-Doo-Dah and that song. I know I have. I like to sing it. I like to whistle it. It's really fun and catchy. Um, so there's that. The second part is I was working from home the other day, as I do, and I decided to put on a playlist of Civil War music. And I Googled that, and there's like 100 songs that came up, and I just hit play just for some background music. And a song came up, and the title threw me for a loop a little bit. And I'm just going to pause, time out here, and just let you know that from here on out, I'm going to be um, saying a word that is a racial slur. It is spelled COON. I'm going to say it, but I wanted to give you a heads up in case you'd rather not hear it. Totally fine. But this song that came on was called Zip Coon. And I was like, excuse me? Zip Coon? That, no. A, what is this song? B, I doubt that's talking about a coon dog or Coon Rapids, Minnesota. I was like, wow, there could be some legitimate uses of that word. I highly doubt that this is not a racist song coming from a Civil War music playlist. So I listened to it and I was like, oh my God, I know this song. Everybody knows this song. It it's it's I was like, "Well, I know that tune. Well, it's called Zip Coon. No, it's actually called Turkey in the Straw. This racist version was a racist version. Whole new lyrics, but it's set to that tune. It was super popular in the mid 1800s. And this is where I opened like this whole can of worms of history. And I was like, whoa. It got me into like minstrelsy, which I knew all about, and blackface, which I knew all about. But if you don't, super popular. um, Shows in the 19th century where white actors dressed as blackface and all that, and they had stock characters, and one of those stock characters was called Old Zip Coon, and he inspired this song. This character inspired this song that was super popular, especially in the South. Um, so so there's another little facet. Okay, so what do Zippity-Doo-Dah and Zip Coon have in common? Well, in my reading on Wikipedia, which I fully admit may not be the best resource, but like I said, I'm not an expert. Um, I was reading the chorus or the lyrics to Zip Coon because I was like, this is very extremely questionable. And the chorus goes, "Oh zip a doodin 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 zip a doodin day." It just repeats that like 6 times. "Oh zip a doodin 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 day. Oh zip a doodin doodin doodin." Not even gonna try it. Doesn't matter. The point is that I read that and I went, "That sounds an awful lot like zippity doo dah, zippity day." And what do you know? It's not a coincidence. So while I know 99% of people in this world do not like, they'll sing Zip-a-Dee-Doo-Dah and not know that. Come on, that is so, like, I found that out randomly because I listened to a Civil War playlist. Nobody does that. But the fact that I found that connection means that I cannot, in good faith and good conscience, sing Zippity-Doo-Dah. How can I? And I'm not mad about that. I think that's I am I'm glad I found that out. So, yeah, whatever, I never have I've been on Splash Mountain once. It scared the pants off of me. Um, so yeah, like, I have 0 attachment in any sort of way, but I'm glad I know why. So, just wanted to share that little, that little bit of, uh, current events with you. Still nobody out there, but I post this and people will see it. Um, moving on. Um, I wanna read the author's bios, for the poems that I read the previous day. I also just want to take time and mention something I've been wanting to mention for the past few days is that in this book, Poetry of the Civil War, I think it's a great collection so far. I do have to mention that I haven't read all the poems, but I tend to believe that all the poets in here are white, which is fine. But I just want to put that out there that if there are poems of the day by African Americans, please let me know. I will look them up. I will feature them. This is just what I had on my shelf, so I'm working with it. But in the spirit of our world and and everything I believe in, um, I just couldn't keep going without mentioning that these are Civil War poems by non Black people, as far as I know. And Black people were the focus of the war. So it'd be nice to get their take on it, at least poetically. All right. Glad I said that as well. So, with that, now I'm going to dive into some poetry. And I'm going to feature the two authors from yesterday. This was the Blue, the Union poem. It was by Ethel Lynn Beers, and she was born in 1827, died in 1879. Was born in Ethelida Elliott in Goshen, New York. She began writing at an early age, her work appearing under the name Ethel Lynn until her marriage in 1846 to William H. Beers. Her best known poem, All Quiet Along the Potomac, which we read yesterday, first appeared as The Picket Guard in the November 30th, 1861 issue of Harper's Weekly magazine. One of the most popular of the war, the poem was reprinted often and frequently claimed by others. Beers was the author of two books, General Frankie, A Story for Little Folks, weird, and All Quiet Along the Potomac and Other Poems, the latter published the day before she died. I would love to mention that one of the few women in this collection, Ethel, had her most well known poem reprinted and frequently claimed by others. Yeah, we are getting into some stuff this morning, and I believe we're all going to come away the better for it. The second poem we featured yesterday was by a fellow named Timrod. Henry Timrod, and his bio reads: born 1829 to 1867 in Charleston, South Carolina, the son of a bookbinder and minor poet. The young Timrod's first collection of verse poems was published in 1860. An impassioned supporter of the Confederacy, he twice enlisted but was discharged both times due to ill health. For a time, he worked as a war correspondent for the Charleston Mercury. In 1864, he moved to Columbia, where he edited the Daily South Carolinian. When the city was burned in February 1865, Timrod was reduced to extreme poverty from which he never recovered. His health continued to deteriorate and he died of tuberculosis. Okay. Um, called it Born in South Carolina. Just called that yesterday because his poem was called Carolina. And I was like, I bet he was born in either North or South, but probably in South. That's great. Okay. Moving on to the actual text now. So we have our first poem. It is from the blue, meaning the Union side. It is simply called Civil War. Rifleman, shoot me a fancy shot, straight at the heart of yon prowling vidette. Ring me a ball in the glittering spot that shines on his breast like an amulet. Oh, Captain, here goes for a fine drawn bead. There's music around when my barrel's in tune. Crack went the rifle, the messenger sped, and dead from his horse fell the ringing dragoon. Now, riflemen, steal through the bushes and snatch from your victim some trinket to hansel first blood, a button, a loop, or that luminous patch that gleams in the moon like a diamond stud. Oh, Captain, I staggered and sunk on my track when I gazed on the face of that fallen vidette, for he looked so like you as he lay on his back that my heart rose upon me and masters me yet. But I snatched off the trinket, this locket of gold, an inch from the center my lead broke its way, scarce grazing the picture so fair to behold of a beautiful lady in a bridal array. Ha! Rifleman, fling me the locket, 'tis she, my brother's young bride, and the fallen dragoon was her husband. Hush! Soldier, 'twas heaven's decree we must bury him there by the light of the moon. But hark! The far bugles, their warnings unite. War is a virtue, weakness a sin. There's a lurking and eloping around us tonight. Load again, riflemen, keep your hand in. That was by Charles Dawson Shanley. Strong words there by Mr. Shanley. What stood out to me was the line, war is a virtue, weakness a sin. So I bet this poem was early on in the war, before people's romantic views were completely smashed to oblivion. Moving on to our second poem, this one is The Gray, meaning the Confederate side. It is by Alexander B. Meek, and it is entitled, Wouldst Thou Have Me Love Thee? Wouldst thou have me love thee? Wouldst thou have me love thee? Wouldst thou have me love thee, dearest, with a woman's proudest heart, which shall ever hold thee nearest, shrined in its inmost part? Listen, then, my country's calling on her sons to meet the foe. Leave these groves of rose and myrtle, drop thy dreamy harp of love, like young corner, scorn the turtle when the eagle screams above. Dost thou pause? Let dastards dally. Do thou for thy country fight, neath her noble emblem rally. God, our country, and our right, listen, now her trumpets calling on her sons to meet the foe. Woman's heart is soft and tender, but 'tis proud and faithful too. Shall she be her land's defender? Lover, soldier, up and do. Seize thy father's ancient falchion, which once flashed as freedom's star, till sweet peace, the bow and halcyon, stilled the stormy strife of war. Listen, now their country's calling on her sons to meet her foe. Sweet is love in moonlight bowers, sweet the altar and the flame, sweet the springtime with her flowers, sweeter far the patriot's name. Should the God who smiles above thee doom thee to a soldier's grave, hearts will break, but fame will love thee, canonized among the brave. Listen then, thy country's calling on her sons to meet the foe. Rather would I view thee lying on the last red field of strife, mid thy country's heroes dying, than become a dastard's wife. I gotta say, I don't fully understand everything in there, but I like it. It still like has that romantic kind of airy feel to it. But I'll have to read this one again a little bit more on my own time. The poem is Wouldst Thou Have Me Love Thee by Alexander B. Meek. So thank you again. This was some Civil War poetry. The book is Poetry of the Civil War. My name is Vincent. We are coming to you from Minneapolis most Mondays and Fridays at 7:30 a.m. live. And a little later on in the afternoon on Facebook, you can like my page, Vincent Hannah. Thanks again. Have a happy and safe 4th of July. Remember that Mount Rushmore is on Lakota land, and I will see you all next week. Take care.